On July 14th, 2023, Burkina Faso's food reserves were dwindling. Just 60 days remained. That same day, in a high-rise in Paris, French officials and corporate elites clinked glasses. In 2 months, Traoré will fall, one whispered, and the resources return to us. Their strategy seemed flawless, except they had overlooked one quiet but vital truth. Ibrahim Traoré had been raised by a woman who taught him that the night is darkest before the dawn. Inside the presidential palace, President Traoré reviewed the situation in silence. The tension in the room was thick. Surrounding him were Agriculture Minister Kabore, Interior Minister Ouedraogo, and Economy Minister Diouf, each wearing anxious expressions. To put it plainly, Traoré finally said, eyes lifting from the documents, our granaries are nearly empty. 4 major irrigation networks have failed in the past quarter, and food production is down by 60%. We face a critical food crisis in about 2 months. Diouf asked hesitantly, and the aid we requested? It's delayed. Traoré replied, sliding a diplomatic message across the table. The World Food Program cites logistical issues. The IMF wants further reviews. The EU claims more assessment is needed. Minister Ouedraogo leaned in. Sir, this timing isn't random. It's too precise. We just reclaimed the gold mines. We told the French military to leave. Traoré nodded. I've thought the same. Konaté, show them. Abeni Konaté, the young intelligence chief, activated a display screen. Satellite imagery, intercepted messages, and financial data flickered across it. For 4 months, she began, her voice composed but intense. There has been a deliberate campaign to manufacture a food crisis. Foreign-backed shell companies bought up our grain. Irrigation failures were no accident. We found signs of sabotage. Weather manipulation tech was deployed from nations still under neo-colonial influence. She advanced to a timeline. Their playbook is clear. Induce hunger, provoke chaos, destabilize the nation, then swoop in with aid tied to reinstating military bases and reclaiming mining concessions. Silence fell. Traoré stepped to the window, gazing over Ouagadougou. They think starvation will bend our will, he murmured. They believe our independence has a price, and that price is food. He turned back to his ministers. They are mistaken. My grandmother lived through the devastating drought of 1973. She told me, the darkest hour comes just before the light. We will not only survive this, we will emerge stronger. We will build true food sovereignty. The next morning, in an unprecedented act of transparency, Traoré addressed the nation by radio and television. My fellow Burkinabe, he began, his voice calm and unwavering. Today I bring you hard truths and a challenge. Our country is under attack, not with bombs, but with hunger. Powers offended by our pursuit of real independence are trying to starve us into submission. He revealed the evidence of foreign interference and sabotage. They assume we'll trade our future for a meal. They don't understand the soul of the Burkinabe. He then unveiled the now legendary Green Defense Plan. Effective immediately, every available patch of land, in villages, cities, even government grounds, would be turned into gardens. The military's new mission would be agricultural support, helping citizens set up drought-resilient farms. Holding up a seed packet, he said, "These are native crops, millet, sorghum, cowpeas, Bambara groundnuts. They fed us before colonization, and they will again. They need little water and resist pests. Every household will get seeds and guidance from our experts." The world watched with mixed reactions. Western media painted it as the desperate gamble of a collapsing regime. Diplomats in Ouagadougou smirked, but the people, they had other plans. To many, Traoré's plan seemed too idealistic, a grassroots dream against a global machine. In Paris, inside the headquarters of Groupe Son, one of France's agricultural powerhouses, CEO Pierre Levine watched the Burkina Faso broadcast with a smirk. Seeds? He chuckled, glancing around the room filled with corporate elites and high-ranking officials. Let him sow all he wants. Our weather manipulation systems will make sure nothing ever grows. He raised a glass. By September, his people will be starving and calling for his resignation. France's foreign minister, Mathieu Dubois, gave a knowing nod. And when that happens, he said, our ally, General T, will step in to restore stability. The mining contracts return. The base reopens. The balance returns. Thousands of kilometers away in Burkina Faso, under the cover of night, Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in his dimly lit office. The burden of a starving nation pressed down on him. Quietly, he opened a drawer and pulled out a tattered notebook, his grandmother's weathered farming journal. Inside were generations of wisdom on how to grow food in impossible conditions. "Guide me, Nana," he whispered, thumbing through the faded pages by the soft glow of a lamp. 3 weeks into the Green Defense Campaign, results were uneven. Some urban gardens thrived, producing fresh vegetables and hope. Others struggled. Crops refused to grow, and strange setbacks plagued their efforts. Reports poured in of contaminated water, seed vaults, mysteriously broken into, and unfamiliar crop diseases emerging overnight. The sabotage wasn't letting up. Meanwhile, the world watched and judged. The New York Times published a bold headline: Burkina Faso faces humanitarian disaster as Traoré blocks Western aid. The French government issued a statement of deep concern for the suffering of the Burkina Faso, while privately, their operatives escalated the pressure. Refusing to yield, Traoré summoned his top agricultural scientists and veteran village farmers for an emergency strategy session. But this wasn't held in the presidential compound. It took place in a modest community hall in a rural farming village outside Ouagadougou. Our current tactics are too predictable, Traoré told them. We're playing a game they've already mastered. We need to change the rules. An elderly woman stepped forward, Fatima Zalika, a guardian of seed diversity for decades. "Mr. President," she said firmly, "we are fighting on their battlefield. Our big open fields. Their satellites see everything. Our centralized irrigation, easy to poison or cut off." From a small pouch, she revealed ancient seed varieties. "Our ancestors farmed here long before the colonizers came. They endured droughts that lasted entire generations, but they didn't use the methods imposed on us." What unfolded over the next hours was the blueprint for a new approach. One rooted in ancestral resilience and upgraded with modern insight. It was decentralized, stealthy, and nearly immune to outside interference. Micro-gardens were tucked under tree canopies, hidden from drones and satellites. Traditional water harvesting techniques were revived, pulling moisture from morning dew and brief rains. Mixed plant layouts confused insects and enriched the soil. Every village began constructing underground seed banks, protected stores of indigenous crop varieties. In some regions, crops were even tended at night to avoid detection and heat. Dr. Amadou Diop, Burkina Faso's foremost agricultural scientist, remained unconvinced. These traditional methods, they can't produce the volume we need, he said skeptically. "They don't have to." Traoré replied calmly, "They just need to hold the line until our real plan is ready." "Real plan?" Diop asked, eyebrows raised. For the first time in weeks, Traoré smiled. "Come, let me show you." That evening, he led a small group of his most trusted aides through a series of tunnels to a repurposed French military bunker deep beneath the capital. Inside, the space had been transformed into a cutting-edge agricultural research facility. Gleaming hydroponic arrays lined the walls. Growth chambers buzzed softly. Dozens of scientists moved with quiet urgency. This is Project Dawn, Traoré announced. While the world focuses on our visible efforts, our best minds have been working here, in secret, to develop crops engineered to thrive in the very artificial climate being used against us. Dr. Aminata Toué, the project's lead researcher, stepped forward. We've been analyzing the weather anomalies caused by the foreign climate manipulation systems. They're not random. They follow engineered patterns. So we've built crops that respond to those exact conditions. The more they tamper with the sky, the stronger these plants grow. They rely on advanced tech, Traoré added, but they forget necessity drives innovation, and no one innovates like people with nothing left to lose, except their future. Back in Paris, the mood inside the French Foreign Ministry had shifted from confidence to concern. Intelligence was trickling in, and it wasn't aligning with expectations. We see crop failure in the predicted zones, said one analyst during a crisis meeting. But the civil unrest we anticipated hasn't emerged. Foreign Minister Dubois frowned. They should be desperate by now. The analyst cleared his throat. Sir, some communities are hungry, but others, somehow, have stable food supplies. We can't locate the source. It's like the food is appearing out of nowhere. CEO Levine's temper boiled over. Then escalate, he barked. Turn up the pressure, amplify the climate ops. Hit their transport hubs. Stop whatever distribution network they're using. But back in Burkina Faso, the underground system had already outpaced their reach. While surface conditions continued to deteriorate under artificial drought and economic isolation, something unexpected was taking root underground. A decentralized food revolution. The blend of stealth micro-farming and climate-adapted crops from Project Dawn was beginning to bear fruit. Literally, the distribution model was intentionally fragmented. Small harvests, carried quietly by individuals, flowed through thousands of independent routes. No central hub. No single target. Every community had its own channel. And Traoré wasn't just watching from a distance. By night, he moved incognito among his people, tending gardens, hauling water, listening to frustrations and hopes whispered in the dark, witnessing his people's quiet resolve, reshaped Ibrahim Traoré's own conviction. One evening, while helping an elderly farmer named Kofi tend to his concealed garden beneath a canopy of trees, Traoré paused to ask, "How are you holding up, Father?" Kofi looked up, his smile etched deep with the lines of a hard life. "Young man, I was a boy during the Great Drought. We ate bark and roots and waited for rain that never came. This is hard, yes, but not hopeless." He patted the earth beside him, gently covering sprouting greens. "And this time, we know who's trying to starve us." "Does knowing make it easier?" Traoré asked. "No," Kofi replied, his voice firm, "but it makes it meaningful. My granddaughter now understands that food is not just survival, it's sovereignty. And that truth will nourish us long after this war is over." As the 60-day deadline loomed, with Project Dawn's first harvest approaching, Traoré realized he needed one final push, or perhaps a high-stakes distraction. On day 55 of the crisis, he took the world by surprise. A public international invitation. Representatives from the UN, the African Union, and even France were formally welcomed to Burkina Faso to assess the food situation for themselves. In Paris, the announcement was met with smug satisfaction. "He's cracking," Levine said, pouring a celebratory drink. "He'll beg for assistance. And we'll name the price." 3 days later, the delegation touched down in Ouagadougou. The group was led by UN World Food Programme Director Helen Wangi and included Claude Bernard, France's deputy foreign minister. Their tour unfolded exactly as anticipated. Neighborhoods on the brink, withered fields, exhausted citizens, curated scenes of struggle. Bernard's confidence swelled. During a private break, he leaned toward Traoré. This experiment has run its course. France is prepared to provide full support in exchange for, shall we say, a rollback of your more recent policies. Traoré looked at him without flinching. Before we talk conditions, I have one last sight to show you. Soon after, the delegates boarded buses and were driven beyond the city limits to what seemed like a desolate stretch of land. The dry air clung to their clothes as they climbed a small rise, and then stopped in astonishment. Below them, stretching across the valley, lay vast fields of thriving crops. Rows upon rows of hardy plants, unfamiliar varieties with thick foliage and deep-rooted stems, flourished in the blistering, manipulated climate. This, Traoré declared, his voice steady, is the next chapter of African agriculture. These are crops engineered not just to survive, but to prosper under the artificial drought systems you've deployed. He turned to Bernard, whose complexion had turned pale. We've been monitoring your atmospheric manipulation for months. Every pattern, every shift, fed our research. The more you tried to destroy us, the more we adapted. Dr. Traoré stepped forward, holding a tablet displaying data models and charts. These crops don't just resist drought, they respond to it. They've been designed to grow stronger under precisely the conditions your technology creates. These plants don't just survive the artificial climate, Dr. Traoré continued. They require it. Under normal weather conditions, they wouldn't thrive like this. UN Director Helena Wangi stared, stunned. Are you saying these drought patterns were engineered? That someone is deliberately creating food shortages? Traoré handed her a thick dossier. We're not speculating, we're showing you proof. Satellite imagery, atmospheric data, intercepted communications. Weather modification isn't science fiction. It's been in use for decades. The only thing that's changed, he said, voice hardening, is the intent behind it. Cameras captured the lush fields as the world watched. Claude Bernard, representing France, attempted to recover his composure. These accusations are outrageous. France has always stood with Burkina Faso. Traoré didn't hesitate. France has been many things to us. Colonial ruler, economic manipulator, military occupier, but never a friend. Friends don't engineer drought to force open gold mines. He turned to the entire delegation. We didn't invite you here to plead for assistance. We invited you to witness a declaration. Not just of resilience, but of sovereignty. Burkina Faso will not only feed itself. We will share these climate-adapted seeds with every African nation under similar pressure. The announcement sent shockwaves around the world. News agencies beamed images of the thriving crops across every continent. The evidence of weather manipulation ignited global outrage. West African nations began speaking out with eerily similar stories. France and its allies found themselves in a diplomatic firestorm. And then, suddenly, the artificial drought stopped. Aid shipments that had been delayed miraculously cleared customs. The European Union extended agricultural partnership offers, this time without policy strings attached. But Traoré declined most of them. Instead, he focused on strengthening Project Dawn and expanding the now thriving network of decentralized farms. The first major harvest of the new climate-specific crops not only fed the nation, it created a surplus. Burkina Faso shared this bounty with neighbors who had once watched in pity, now looking on with admiration. 6 months after the crisis began, the presidential palace hosted a very different kind of gathering. The manicured lawns were gone, replaced by productive gardens growing food where flowers once stood. Leaders from across West Africa arrived, not for military talks or trade deals, but to learn about a new model of self-reliant agriculture. In a simple but historic ceremony, Traoré inaugurated the African Seed Sovereignty Bank, a Pan-African institution dedicated to preserving indigenous crop varieties and developing new ones suited to the continent's changing climate. What began as an attack on our sovereignty, Traoré told the assembled leaders, has become the foundation of our independence. For too long, those who control food have controlled nations. Today, that changes. Later, as the guests explored the gardens, Traoré slipped away to a quiet corner where an elderly woman was kneeling among rows of seedlings. It was Auntie Zalika, his grandmother's sister, the guardian of ancestral farming wisdom who had helped shape their survival plan. "You look tired, my son," she said without looking up. "The fight never ends," Traoré replied, crouching beside her. "No, it doesn't," she agreed softly, "but it transforms. Yesterday, you fought with speeches. Today, you fight with seeds and soil. These are stronger weapons." She placed a tiny seedling in his palm. "Your grandmother always said you had a farmer's hands, not a soldier's." Traoré smiled, feeling the life in his fingers. "She also told me the darkest hour comes before the dawn." "And was she right?" Auntie Zalika asked, glancing at the thriving gardens, the children planting seedlings in schoolyards, the African leaders talking not of war, but of harvests. He looked at it all and nodded. "The dawn came," he said quietly, "and it was worth waiting for." In Paris, fallout was swift. Resignations rippled through the French government. Group Sun's stock plummeted under boycotts and investigations. But in elegant boardrooms, new strategies were already being drawn. Africa's resources were too valuable. If this tactic had failed, another would be found. The game would continue. But something irreversible had shifted. A nation that could feed itself was no longer a pawn, and a leader who had weathered an invisible war, who had turned seeds into survival, would never be easy to control again. As Ibrahim Traoré pressed the seedling into the earth, gifted to him by the hands of tradition and resistance, he understood that the road ahead was still steep, but now it was their road. And for the first time, Burkina Faso's future had roots that no empire could unearth.